preview blowout pod. We have the Night Report, we have the Scarlet Faithful, and we have Night Watch all together once again to give you guys a breakdown of everything leading up to the 2025 football season. We're going to do some quick introductions for those of you who weren't here last year. We did a similar thing minus Alec, where we kind of all got together and had a powwow. This big pod. We did 3 parts last year. We're going to do 2 parts this year. First, we're going to introduce ourselves, starting with Larry. Larry, talk about yourself and where people can find your work.
Thanks for having me, guys. It's an absolute blast to be with you guys. Larry Crane from Night Watch, which is a YouTube channel and a podcast. Former writer for On the Banks. My editor, Aaron Breitman, here is on the cast too, so it's cool.
I'm the old guy of the group. I've been a Rutgers fan for a few decades now, and happy to be here. Always fun. And Scarlet Faithful used to have a website, now just do the podcast on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple. And then my Twitter account's Aaron_Breitman. And looking forward to this as always.
I'm David Anderson, and I'm a frequent guest on both Larry's show for Night Watch as well as for the Scarlet Faithful, as well as I do contribute to Off Tackle Empire and Off Tackle Republic, which is a story for another day.
Hello, everyone. In case, speaking of people who weren't here last year, me, Alec, one of the beat writers covering Rutgers for the Night Report, also on the Night Report podcast. That's kind of most of my story. I'm sure people are dying to know. But yeah, on to you, Mike.
Now, I'm Mike Broadbent, the host of the Night Report podcast. If you're listening to any of these pods, you've probably heard me on most of them. I was on Larry's pod. Actually, I haven't been on the Scarlet Faithful yet, but I'm sure we can make that happen. And that's who I am.
Richie O'Leary, publisher of the Night Report, co-host Night Report podcast. You can find us at theNightReport.com and anything basically Rutgers athletics. Yeah.
So now that we've all gotten to know each other here, let's talk a little bit about last year before we get into 2025. Last year, I think we all kind of were expecting a bit more than what we got out of the Scarlet Knights for one reason or another. Well, I'm going to share on the screen now for those who are listening or watching on YouTube, rather, to kind of see where we were at prediction-wise last year. Collectively, we all thought they were an 8-4, 9-3 type team. Obviously, they ended up going 7-5, so I guess we weren't necessarily that far off, but it felt like pretty far off from our expectations. Aaron, I'll let you start with this one. Where do you think Rutgers? What do you think? How do you think Rutgers' season went compared to your expectations for the team last year?
Overall, I'd say it wasn't as far away as I guess the final record appeared. But there were some definite missed opportunities that I think we all as Rutgers fans will lament over the years. Specifically, that stretch in October where they really got beat up, just getting blown off the ball defensively. I think that was the biggest surprise for everybody. Just how much the defense had to step back last year. Obviously, injuries contributed to that. I think the coaching staff being a little slow to adjust to that as well. But then after the bye week, tremendous comeback. I am still salty. As you can see, I predicted them to go undefeated in November. And if it wasn't for an ill-advised icing of the kicker call by Greg Schiano in the most ridiculous of scenarios, 50-yarder against the wind, it would have come true. So I am a little bitter about that. But I think losing that game and losing Kansas State, if you win both of those games, then I think everyone would have walked away with, feeling great about that season, even though October was still muddy. Overall, it was a good season, not a great season. I think we all were hoping for great. So it really kind of puts us at an interesting spot going into this season with a much tougher schedule and a lot of new personnel as well.
Yeah, I'll echo a lot of what Aaron said. I think that if going back to our record predictions, I was kind of thinking 8-4, but I also assumed there would be a clunker in there, which turned out to be Wisconsin that I had already predicted a loss. But other than that, I mean, I think overall the offense was a little better than I thought it would be, and the defense was more than just a little bit worse. And it just pretty much a lot of the things we thought might have been a red flag pretty much all hit. And then the things that we thought were positives or potential X factors in the other direction, only a few of them hit, i.e. Ian Strong, Ethan Kaliak-Manis, some development across the offensive line type of things. So again, I think, yeah, it felt a lot worse in the moment than in retrospect. But to Aaron's point, that's 2 one-score games away from finishing with a 9-4 record, or even being in the Citrus Bowl and having a nice win there.
Alec, how
Now,
about you?
well, as you can see on the spreadsheet, I was not here last year. I don't remember exactly which game. I remember that I predicted an 8-4 regular season. I want to say the losses I predicted were USC, Nebraska, Wisconsin, and I think like Michigan State or something. I don't remember. But either way, yeah, how the season actually went. It was, in terms of my expectations, I did not expect it to start as hot as it did and then crash as hard as it did in October. And then I thought November was going to be, I thought they were going to go 3-1 in November. I just wasn't sure which one they were going to lose. And obviously that ended up being correct, the record wise, but I didn't expect it to go the way it did. Just a lot of what David and Aaron have already said, the way that things went down, we obviously didn't expect the litany of injuries that we saw along the defense. I certainly didn't expect the passing offense to take as big of a step forward down the stretch in the season as it did as well. So I'll say in terms of record, I think I was 2 games off because I predicted 9-4, the win in the bowl game. But in terms of just the peaks and valleys of the season, I didn't expect it to be as drastic as it was in terms of how solid the end was and how disastrous the middle was.
Yeah, I think the injuries immediately derailed what could have been a good season. I know we were talking about this yesterday on Larry K's pod, but I feel like it was just like bad omens from the start with losing a guy like Mohamed Toure in the preseason, because like a lot of what they probably wanted to do on defense was already scrapped in terms of like special packages for him where he could kind of go from his off the ball linebacker position and kind of like creep down along the defensive line. He just gave us a lot more versatility. And then we lost that, and then everybody else seemingly got hurt. And I think Shiano learned a lot of things last year that are going to be valuable lessons moving forward, like having redundancy on your roster, not playing injured players. So I do think overall, while it was painful, I think last year was a good series of learning lessons, and we'll see how many of them can be applied, not properly, but effectively into 2025.
Yeah, I think we were all kind of pretty close too. Like 8-4, 9-3. Like that's. I mean, Aaron said it before. That one kick doesn't go in, and all of a sudden, it's like, okay. Or I'm sorry, no, it didn't go in. The one ice the kicker didn't happen, and all of a sudden, we're talking about a whole totally different team. We're talking about an 8-win Rutgers team. Hell, maybe a 9-win Rutgers team. Maybe they ride that momentum all the way into the bowl game and upset Kansas State. But yeah, I mean, I think Greg's learned a lot. I think that they've learned that they need depth. They don't just need starters anymore. And you see that with the transfer portal haul in the winter, and then also in the spring, he just brought in another 4 linemen. So I think it's going to be an interesting year. I think that they we'll talk about it, but I think it's going to be a much different team than last year too.
I think I was right the first 5 games, and I knew they'd lose at least one in that last month. I totally picked the wrong one in Maryland, but where it kind of went off the rails for me was the middle of that season, and I'm still counting that season as a bit of a missed opportunity. And I understand the injuries, but when you look at some of those losses, Nebraska, look, I know their defensive line was difficult for us, but their quarterback had a rough day comparatively to what we thought it would be. And we were unable, didn't challenge maybe the run. We're not going to relitigate that. Greg would really not like to hear us relitigate that. And then the Illinois game, that's situational football that could be 2 potential wins or a different game. And so injuries hurt for sure, and especially that blowout loss to Wisconsin. But there's some opportunity in there that I still think we could have capitalized on and didn't. And we're not going to have another schedule like this on paper for a little bit. So not a catastrophic season by any stretch. We were all kind of close, but I'm still a little disappointed. Doesn't shake my faith in the direction of the program.
Yeah, I think we've all kind of said a lot of what I thought. On this right column here, this is just how we did game by game last year. You'll notice Aaron went 9-3 on his game by game predictions, winning the unofficial best predictor crown of the group. So congratulations to Aaron for that. Even though he did have that one late game when he was talking about where he was a field goal away, he still took the crown home despite the tough luck loss there. So, Aaron, anything you want to say? Your victory speech here about your best predictions for the group last year.
Yeah, I should have been 10-2 because they should have beaten Illinois. But I think to what Larry just said, I think for me that's the biggest takeaway is that, and one like they're not gonna. I don't honestly know if they'll ever have as favorable of a Big Ten schedule with as experienced as a team as they had last year. So I think that's the big what if, and kind of for Rutgers fans looking back on this, I think years from now it's going to be that was a year where. Yeah, it was a good season, but there was a lot of missed opportunity. It should have been better. And I think, there were some decisions on the coaching staff. I think, unfortunately, it wasn't their best season. I think they deserved a lot of credit for getting that team off the mat. I think, to Richie's point, Shiano's done a really good job in the offseason in terms of approaching the portal and rebuilding the roster. But, some fans that remember Shiano right before Alec was born, when Shiano came to Rutgers, he's always been questioned for some game decisions, and unfortunately, I think some of those questions still linger.
And I do want to just kind of high level just go over where we kind of set the over-unders for last year for different position groups for the offense before we get into predictions for this year. So last year I had the over-under for receptions leader at 49.5 and ended up being over that result, 59 with Dymere Miller. The over-under for yardage for a receiver I had at 749.5, and that also went over. And that was Dymere Miller as well with 757, just 7 yards off on that. So I'm going to pat myself on the back. Pretty close there. 5.5 for the over-under touchdowns. It went under, but Ian Strong had 5, so another really close over-under there. I set the over-under for rushing yards, so I thought it'd be more of a split last year at 999.5. That went over. Kyle Monungai had 1279. Receptions for Kyle Monungai I had at 14.5, and he had 14. Touchdowns, 10.5, he had 13. Kaliak Manis passing yards at 24.99, and he had 26.96. Passing touchdowns, 17.5, and he had 18. And then we all kind of picked a breakout player and MVP. And then the offensive rank I had at 69.5. That went under. They were better than 69.5. Anything related to let's talk about like the key area from last year that we need to see improvement for there to be a higher level of success in 2025. David, I'm going to start with you. Where do you see that key area on the team, whether it be personnel, whether it be coaching? Really, it's kind of an open format, whatever you think.
Whatever it takes for them to give up less big plays on defense. And there are a couple ways to look at that. One, second and third level defenders who can take people down, take better angles, an 8-yard run instead of a 20 instead of a 40, a 50 instead of a touchdown, whatever it is. I think that's a combination of all the things you said. It's a little bit on coaching, it's a little bit on individual player development, and it's a little bit on potentially having players who are better equipped to do that. The one thing I'll just make that's maybe slightly less obvious is obviously if you have a better pass rush, then you're going to force teams to get the ball out quicker and probably make less big plays. So I'm not saying that the defensive line is not a part of this at all, but really it needs to be improvement in all three levels in preventing the number of big plays that they allowed last year.
Yeah, I'll focus on the pass rush just to, switch it up a little bit and be a little bit different. It got better as the season went on. I mean, I think we all know, the defense in particular improved a lot after the bye week. In those final 5 games, they finally started to get to the quarterback. I think we need to see more of that in 2025 just to, put pressure on the opposing quarterback. And that also helps the back seven, who is still kind of meshing and gelling together. Obviously there's a lot of newcomers. If the defensive line can get after the quarterback and make life difficult for that opposing quarterback, it's going to help the back end because they don't have to do as much grunt work and covering guys and making sure they're in there all in their assignments and things like that. So yeah, I think the pass rush, I mean, we've been talking about it for multiple years now. When are they going to take that next step? I'm sure we'll get into that a little bit as this goes on and even in the next episode when we talk about defense too. But I think the pass rush needs to be a focal point to make sure this back end of the defense, they're probably going to get better as the season goes on as they just play together more. So in order to help that transition, I think the pass rush needs to be ferocious, or at the very least better than, bottom half of the Big Ten or even the bottom of the Big Ten like we've seen the last few years.
Yeah, for me, it's getting the run defense fixed, or at least at an acceptable level. Because you guys both kind of were alluding to this, but if Rutgers is going to allow, it was like a night and day difference from the 23 team to the 24 in terms of big plays allowed. David, you talked about, in 23 we had the longest streak of not allowing a 40+ yard play, and then last year I think we almost led the nation in explosive plays allowed. So that certainly needs to be limited severely, because you can't really stay in games when you're just allowing that many big plays. And staying healthy also would help, but that's kind of a luck of the draw, because 23 you couldn't have been healthier than they were, and 24 I don't think you could have been more injured than they actually ended up being.
Well, I mean, I'll piggyback on the health thing too. I mean, he just fired a guy that was with him for 17 seasons.
Yeah.
It had been partially his fault, at least. I know Jay Butler's not known for letting guys stretch, because he was just anti-stretch. He just wanted to go out there, and it was just, hey, guys, do what you do. And we saw it all last season. So many starters were hurt, playing banged up. Robert Longerbeam's playing with like half a leg. Flip Dixon's on half a knee. Tyrene Powell is like on half an Achilles and half a wrist. Like, Aaron Lewis was hurt, and then Wesley Bailey gets hurt and he quits. So it is all about health, I feel like, this season. But they did help that a little bit, and that goes back to the thing I said about depth before. And they added a ton of depth pieces that could probably step up and be, I wouldn't say as good, but at least step up and be serviceable at the very best. But I think health is going to be a big thing, and I think you're going to see some differences with the team this year, with health, with strength, with everything that comes with strength and conditioning, because Spencer Brown has implemented a lot of different things between camp, between just arriving in the summer even.
I think I do want to touch on defense, because I think it's obviously the glaring issue here. But I hope and I do expect them to do this, open it up early and often on offense. Last year, I thought they hit some hiccups earlier when they were a little bit too stubborn. Look, you have a superstar running back, I understand. But we had some really talented players on the perimeter, some really talented young players, and a quarterback who was capable in that system. And we saw it really take hold, and we had a lot of success with it later in the year. Just do that from the beginning. I think they will. They don't have that back obviously anymore. The offensive line's a different look. On defense, I'm piggybacking off of what Alex said, and some of the other guys as well. The linebacker play, you bring in guys who maybe can close the deal in the pass rush. Hopefully Weaver and Walker's coming back, and you got O'Neal, but Jabome was really flashing at times last year, and at times he had growing pains. And Walker had a lot of growing pains, as talented as he is, with as much upside as he has. I really need to see those linebackers take good angles, close in on the run game, and do what their job is to get that defense just all around more solid, whether it's creating turnovers, sacks, or just limiting the big plays. They've got to do a better job in order for our offense to get to work and for us to have success.
I think I was going to say big plays as well. I think that's the obvious one, but I think one also to think about that maybe is forgotten a little bit is as many big plays as they gave up. They didn't stop opposing offenses in the red zone once all season. 31 red zone opportunities, 31 scores, 22 touchdowns. Over 2/3. That's a little high. Good defenses, it's more like 50%. So. I think it wasn't just a matter of giving up the big plays. They didn't really recover as a defense when they were allowing those big plays, and they kind of just crumbled in those situations. So I think more resiliency on defense, being able to give up a big play but then bounce right back is almost as important as not giving up those big plays at all.
That's a shocking stat, Aaron. I can't believe that that's the first time I'm hearing this from somebody covering the team, and me being one of them. So great pull there on those numbers.
I've had it for 3 minutes, so thank you.
Let's talk about the changes to the coaching staff and the roster. We've all talked about this ad nauseum, so I'm not going to go into the minutia of it, but offensive staff largely intact, defensive staff, a lot of turnover there. The turnover, especially at play caller, is always a thorny one, and it's something that I'm not always excited to discuss. So anyone who has a strong opinion on the defensive play caller change, just kind of talk your talk. David, I know you've kind of had a very close personal relationship with the old defensive coordinator, so you can kind of speak to, you know, his personality and Rob Smith's personality and how they kind of differ. So you want to talk about like the thing that kind of maybe you'll be watching most closely from the defensive play calling aspect?
Yeah, and I don't think it has that much to do with Harasimiak. It probably has more to do with Shiano than the coordinator, which is Rob Smith's worked with him several times. And at most of those stops, other than maybe Rutgers, like right before Shiano left to go to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, there was an understanding that they couldn't just sit back and let offenses come at them. And then I think we saw a little bit too much of the Chris Ash approach last year, where, like Larry was pointing out on the Night Watch podcast yesterday, you know, we're just going to line up man on man and beat these guys. And they got a little bit too much into that vein. The irony being the game that they snuck out of nowhere was the Washington game, which they dictated the action the most. And so I think Rob Smith understands that, and hopefully Shiano is going to respect his ideas enough to realize, like, hey, you're right. We have to just mix things up and be a little less predictable on that side of the ball. I mean, as much as Harasimiak was, you know, lauded as a hire in 2023, pushed all the right buttons, he was never a coach that really came up with a lot of creative, like, blitz packages, trying to exploit matchups. It was more, we're going to do what we do, not try to, you know, pull a fast one on the other team. And I know there's a balance. I'm not saying you need to just, you know, try to focus on the other team's weakness, but you have to come up with a better balance than they had last year. And my hope is that somewhere between Shiano and Smith, or if it has to be Sparber at some point because of whatever reason, that they understand that, yeah, we may give up a big play at some point, but we have to at least be more aggressive and try to confuse the offense a little bit more, which to many of these points, it's hard with injuries because you're not sure if every one of your two deep can execute that. But that's a problem that this coaching staff is just going to have to solve.
Anyone else have any kind of key points they think about the coaching changes from this offseason that they think will be super effective for this 2025
I
team?
think I'm watching Sparber. I mean, I'm mentioning these young linebackers who have a lot of talent, who at times look like they needed a little help with where to be, with, you know, working within the defense. And Sparber, he's coming in as a co-defensive coordinator, but Shiano really wanted him because that's maybe part of the reason for the title. And he's coaching linebacker. So what does he do with the development of these linebackers? How much do we see it? We saw it with the offensive line when we got Pat in here. And so are we going to see that type of step up with a really good position coach? And it'll be evident if it is, because these two guys have a lot of talent, but we want him to take the next step. I'm watching him.
So I find it interesting. Shiano said it recently in a press conference about how, like, some of these guys are, like, even Rob Smith, he's coming back, but he's worked under some notable names over the past couple of years. Like, he worked with Manny Diaz, he worked with Tom Allen, he worked with Mike Elko. And then you have Vic Hall coming in, who has experience working with, Zach Sparber, who has experience working with Rob Smith, who has experience working with Lyle Hemphill, with Tyler Santucci. Like, these are all, like, pretty good name defensive coordinators in college football. And he kind of mentioned it and kind of hinted towards it that these guys run similar schemes to what they do, but they're going to add new wrinkles, and they're bringing those new wrinkles back with them. So I'm really intrigued to see if Rob Smith is actually going to bring those wrinkles back, or is it just Rob Smith of old and we got 2 years with him and then it's see you later again?
More of a general commentary than specific to the coaching change, but can this coaching staff, I think we all think and hope this team has more team speed defensively. Can they get the most out of this defense, put guys in right positions, right spots to maximize that speed? Because that was a real issue last year.
So let's talk about the incoming players, because I don't think we've ever seen the amount of turnover without the number of losses. I think they're kind of treating this as a weird, like, uncapped year for NIL, and also kind of the roster limits that were proposed aren't necessarily fully set in yet. So Rutgers went out and grabbed 19 transfers out of the transfer portal, and I think, Richie, you can correct me if I'm wrong, they signed, I want to say, like 25 high school kids as well. So I don't think we've ever had this many incoming players coming into a Rutgers training camp, or I guess, you know, off season, if you want to say that. Alec, I'll start with you. Give me a position group or a specific player that you're most intrigued by that was an addition this off season before we get into the offense itself.
I mean, it feels like the layup answer is the two defensive ends that came into the transfer portal from the Group 5 ranks, Eric O'Neal and Bradley Weaver. They were very effective at that level. Eric O'Neal had one of the best seasons in the country by defensive end. So I think it's going to be interesting to see how that translates. And, you know, we've talked a lot about it, and I'm sure we'll get to it as well. How reliable are they going to be as blue chip pass rushers in the Big Ten? I think that's the biggest question, how that translation goes. But that's also why it's the most intriguing, I guess, room/duo, whatever, because they're expected to start. It seems like, you know, they brought them in, and there was a lot of attention that those two guys got from other Power Four programs as well. So I think it's just a matter of how do those two guys gel, and can they, like I said before, can they really help bolster this pass rush to a level that we haven't seen in the last couple of years?
Yeah, I think that probably would have been the 1A answer at worst, or 1B answer, I guess, for everybody here. The thing I'm most interested in is just the bolstering of the offensive line. Schiano went out and got a ton of experienced guys, a ton of guys who have played at a lot of different levels at a high level. So I don't think we're going to have another season that's derailed from losing one key starter along the offensive line. I think there is a lot of redundancy there. So I'm excited to see what those lineup combinations look like, because I don't think they've fully. Schiano has said, like, I think I have a good idea of who's going to be starting, but it's going to be exciting to see how those pieces actually fit in with one another.
30 high school commits if we count
Wow.
YD Collier and the two new corners.
That's right, because they did add
count
3.
Jalen Matthews
yeah.
at this point. Like, he's technically on the list, but yeah, so it was 30 and then 19, which is insane. That's an entire roster race, basically. I'm gonna go different because you guys kind of took my answers. Jet Elad. I'm intrigued to see what Jet Eli can do this year. I think on tape he was really good at UNLV. He's very productive. And then when you see Greg Schiano go on record in the courtroom saying he's a future NFL player, kind of makes your ears perk up a little bit. And you're like, okay, this guy knows DBs. He's talking about him. He also apparently paid him a ton of money, which is also on the court record, which is great to know now. But yeah, I'm really intrigued to see what he can do. Can he play up closer to the box and be that type of safety, that hybrid guy? Or is he just going to just kind of sit back there and just kind of roam? I'm really intrigued to see how this defense is just going to work as a whole. And it goes back to what I said before about Rob Smith. Are these new wrinkles going to be implemented? Are they even real? Are they fake? We'll just have to wait and see what happens on game day. But I think Jet Eli has a ton of potential and kind of could be a superstar for that defense, or at least a name that we'll hear a lot.
I think so. You guys took my answers, obviously, and I'm also interested in the defensive ends. I have spoke to Steve Vitt from the Bobcat Corner in the Ohio preview this morning, and he was very high on Weaver, so he liked this tape. We'll see how that translates. But let me go a little bit of a different direction just to keep it different. CJ Campbell and DT Sheffield. The reason I say that is not because we had holes to fill that we didn't have last year, but because we needed to fill those holes from departing players. The outgoing guys were key last year, obviously, Manungai and Miller. You need to replace those pieces if the offense is going to be what you expect it to be, not to mention that we have some turnover on the line, a key turnover. So you needed to plug those holes. We might have even upgraded with respect to the wide receiver. We'll see. And that would be great because Miller was what we wanted last year. So I'm watching those guys, and I think those are important additions.
Yeah, Larry, with a CJ Campbell, I think what's important about him is the element he could add to the offense with a passing threat out of the backfield. But I'm going to go Cam Miller, cornerback out of Penn State. For some reason, he's kind of, I think, under the radar a little bit, and I think he's a guy that can make a huge impact, be that number one cornerback. They need that consistency there. Obviously, Longerbeam's gone, and I think for this defense to take a step forward, they need a guy that's a lockdown corner, and I think he could be that.
Yeah, I think it could have gone any of the directions that you guys went. I mean, I think all the answers are good, but the one I would probably point to in terms of the biggest one who might change the calculus is if Campbell and Sheffield and even Colin Weber, the tight end, can make the offense different. Because I haven't been at practice, right, as we all know and many of our posters know. But Sheffield, even if he's not as good of a receiver as Daimler Miller, if he can be a bigger threat, especially vertically, that makes everything different on offense. That makes more of the field that has to be defended. Colin Weber, we're hoping that it can be a nice complement to Kenny Fletcher, because that, again, would give you a couple, or different than Mike Higgins, Logan Blake, that might give you different options at the tight end spot. And all these things, like Larry said about Campbell out of the backfield, all these things will make other defensive coaches have to prepare for a wider range of things Rutgers can do. Last year, it started out, they were preparing for Monungai, and then it extended to Monungai and these big possession receivers. Well, and I mean, even Miller was kind of a possession receiver. So really, now can you completely add another layer on top of it that is going to allow you to maybe sneak by with a run now and then, just for bigger yards, because they're all worried about where the pass game is going to go. So, yeah, I mean, I think all good answers, but I think that probably raises the ceiling of this team the most if those guys can add another dimension.
Richie, did you have something else? Or
No, I was just saying when he said, I don't know if DT's better than Daimir, and I was like, he's better.
yeah, he just kind of, his film
Closer.
just jumps out at you from North Texas. Really excited to see how they end up utilizing him. But I think that leads nicely into the discussion about the offense, which will be the primary discussion we go over here. How we'll do this is we're going to break it into three major sections. The first will be what we think is the primary key to success for the offense this year. The second, we'll all choose a breakout player, and we could all kind of self-define what that means. I don't want to put anybody in too tight of a box. And then we're going to do some predictions on who we think leads different statistical categories based on the over-unders I've set. So those are the three areas we'll get into. I'll start with the key to success. David, you kind of alluded to it. A few of you guys kind of alluded to it. I think the ability to just like play with multiplicity along the offense will be huge, where you kind of can have, I think you have the personnel for the first time where you can kind of effectively game plan, where you don't necessarily have to like serve like either pea soup or carrot soup each week. You can maybe serve pizza, or you can serve sandwiches, or you can, make a whole 5-course meal if you need to, based on what the opposing defense is good at. So that's kind of what I think will be a key to success this year, especially against some of the higher level opponents that we didn't have on the schedule last year. How about you, Rich? What do you think is the key to success offensively for this team in 2025?
I mean, I'm just saying, I'm not picking either of those soups, but that's just me. More of a chicken noodle guy. But anyway, I think it's going to come down to the blocking. I mean, you just lost your premier left tackle over the past couple of years in Holland Pierce. If you can give Ethan Kalikman his time, I think that there's enough weapons on this offense that this offense has the potential to literally explode. There's so many different capabilities between CJ Campbell out of the backfield, between Colin Weber, who David Anderson just mentioned before. Even Kenny Fletcher was pretty damn good the first couple games before getting hurt. Add in those wide receivers on the outside, an explosive playmaker in DT Sheffield in the middle, and you have a lot of different weapons to work with. And I think it's really going to come down to a specific position on that line, and it's going to come down to that left tackle spot. And I thought it was going to be Ryder Langsdale. I feel like a lot of people thought he was the guy there. Obviously, him getting hurt wasn't ideal, but someone's got to step up there and then just make this line gel. I think with Pat Flaherty back there, I think they'll be okay, if not solid. It's just going to come down to if this line can block or not.
Mike, your analogies, the illustrative potency of these things is just astounding. I love them. I'm going to continue with that analogy. I want this to be one of those offenses where, it's like one of those restaurants you go to and it's so gourmet that you just eat whatever the chef has. There's only 4 options.
Yeah, you don't even order anything. They just have a menu that they feed you. Yeah.
Like, I don't want to have any expectation going into the games. The reason I say that is this. Not only do you have a lot of weapons starting or on the 2.5, as they say, but you got so many moving parts and guys with so much talent that you can keep a team off balance, whether it's the running back room, bring Raymond in, change it up. They might be expecting to see Campbell. Ben Black, we're not talking a ton about him. I don't see the practices, but sometimes that kid is flashed too, and he's not even one of the starters at this point that we're talking so much about. There's so many ways, and don't forget about Fletcher. Don't forget about the tight ends. There are so many ways to keep teams off balance. I really want to see Kirk sit down week after week and find the creases in defenses, find the creases in the tape, and take advantage of it. Come out with totally different looks because you have the personnel, assuming, like Richie said, that line holds, which is key. I think there's the key is to keep teams off balance and utilize every weapon you have. depending on the opponent.
Yeah, I think to Larry's point about Shiraka, but I'll expand on that. I think it comes down to coaching. I think will Shiano allow Shiraka, right? It's his third season. He's going to expand the playbook. He has more weapons. Will he just let him cook? Or is he going to get, at times, conservative, which we know sometimes it tends to happen? And how much is he going to just kind of, I think the identity of this team is going to be really fascinating to watch because it really could be a flip of the script from what we've seen in years past where they're an offensive first team that needs to be able to put up a certain amount of points to be able to win games. Not to say the defense won't be better or improve or have certain strengths, but in many years of Shiano tenure 1 and 2, the defense has set the tone for the season, for the team. It's been the identity of the team. And I think there's a real chance to be the opposite of that this year. So how much does Shiano kind of embrace that, accept that, and go with that, and put his faith in Shiraka to really utilize the weapons that he has at his disposal? I think that's the real key.
So for me, I'm going to go more along the lines of what Richie was saying, because one of the things that I learned very early on from my dad, who's the one who went to Rutgers, well, both my parents, but got me into watching Rutgers football, is a lot of times you need at least 2 offensive linemen who are above average in each phase of the game. And when I look at this group, last year you had Holland Pierce, who was above average in both phases. The team definitely took a step back when Brian Felter was out because he was probably their best other run blocker. And so it's unfair to say that none of these offensive linemen have improved or that none of the transfers would play and be a potential upgrade in some area. But I need to see, for all these wrinkles and all this other stuff to work, we have to see an offensive line that has at least 2 guys who you can say, hey, if we got to get 2-3 yards, we run behind this guy. Maybe it's Felter, or maybe if it's a pass, it's like, who do we trust to be on an island with whoever they're blocking? And then if the other guys have to help out because the other team's got an All-American defensive tackle, or we need to help with a tight end and protection or whatever, that we have confidence these 2 other guys, no matter who is in front of them man-on-man and pass blocking, or whoever in the run game, because again, you can't have one or else the other team's going to know, right? So who is it? And that's really where I think that this season is going to come down to on the offensive side of the ball, because again, I think I'm confident Shiraka will figure it out. Now, to Aaron's point, will Greg let him? I don't know, but that's really what I think. They really need the line to have a couple guys step up and be even better than they were last year.
For mine, I'm going to take a note from Aaron's point when talking about the identity of the offense. My wrinkle on it for my key to success is how this offense controls the game and controls the tempo. Because in some of the past couple of years when they've had their success and the defense has been the head of that success, the offense has been able to control the tempo by doing their job in terms of running the football and just taking time off the clock and keeping the time possession battle. It's going to be a little bit different this year, especially if the defense is still a bit of a work in progress, as we've been hearing from Shiano himself. How does the offense control the game and control the tempo? A part of that's going to have to be running the ball effectively. Maybe it doesn't carry the offense like it did in years past, but they're going to have some semblance of a stable rushing attack in order to, control the game and make sure, because you don't want your defense to be on the field as, all the time. If you're scoring quick touchdowns, high flying passing attack, that's great and all, but then you're kind of leaving your defense kind of out to dry, and we'll see if the defense is up for that. But controlling the game is going to be really interesting to watch from this offense. If they do have a potential rushing attack, how that kind of works out with the guys that they have in that room. We've heard about all 3 of them, so it's a bit more abstract what I'm going with, but I'm going to say how they control the game and how they control the tempo when the onus is on them to kind of be the focal point of the team rather than the defense has been the last couple of years.
That's a great point.
Quick point.
You go ahead.
Sorry, Mike.
You're good.
Yeah, I was going to throw in, I think the blocking on young guys is going to be sorely. How well can the running backs block on third down situations? I think is a huge key as well for the offense.
Yeah, a bunch of great points, and I think there's a lot that we kind of think will change with the offense in 2025. So it'll be I can't wait to just see the unit in general. But Rich, if you had to point to a single player you're earmarking as your breakout player for 2025 along the offense, doesn't have to necessarily be a guy who gets stats. Like, it could be an offensive lineman if you want. But who's your breakout player along the offense in 2025?
I feel like it's cheating if I say Ian Strong, but I'm going to go with a lineman. I'm going to be safe here. I really think Taj White is going to be a guy that's going to step up this year. I really think that you're not even going to question anything about the tackle spot on that side, at least. And I think he has all the potential in the world. And you kind of saw glimpses of it last year. They had him playing guard. They had him playing tackle. They trusted him as that sixth offensive lineman to come in. And as the season went on, he got better and better. And I think with a full offseason of working with Flaherty again, and a full offseason of working next to basically the same offensive line unit for the most part, I really think that his ceiling could be very high. And I think he has the potential to be a damn good offensive tackle this season.
I, too, don't want to go Ian Strong because I think it's the easy answer, but I'm going to do something a little nuanced. I'm going to say KJ Duff, and here's why. I think Ian Strong is going to emerge and be that just all-out alpha receiver and be one of the better receivers in the Big Ten. I think he's going to reach his potential. When that happens, it draws coverage away from other guys, and I think KJ Duff is an athletic freak. I think he's got a ton of potential himself. His wingspan, the way he plays the game, I thought he was a huge asset to the team as he emerged last year. And I think you're going to see him be an actual, really legitimate force on the other side of Ian Strong in a way that maybe we kind of saw glimpses of, but now he's another year in the system, another year older. And I think we're going to really love seeing this entire receiver core go to work every Saturday.
Do we have Aaron, or is it over to me?
Simply because, hasn't had can catch up after a long time. I think it's something we've all wanted to see this offense do. And I think he gives them a unique weapon that they haven't had in quite some time. I know Mike from Mike's reaction, I stole his answer, so I did too. But I think that CJ Campbell, it's not just his ability to catch out of the backfield, but can he be a solid rusher as well? Because I think it is going to be more of a committee approach in offense, but can he be that impact guy and the opportunities he gets?
Well, one of my answers was Taj White, so Richie already got that one. The other one, and this is kind of more of a dark horse, but I'm going to say Ben Black, and here's why. Because I think that the way that I was always understood it was Bill Belichick would go into every season with 4 different templates for an offensive game plan. And kind of to what you were saying, Mike, about the carrot soup versus the pea soup, obviously some favored passing more, rushing more, different packages, whatever. And they would run one of those 4 each of the first 4 games of the season and not even care if they won or lost, because the Patriots knew they were going to come back around and they were going to win the AFC East and go to the playoffs no matter what and go to the SEC championship game. So anyway, all to say that I think that Ben Black will be a star. He could be a breakout star, even though if every week you don't know if that's going to be the week or not. Because in some of those game plans, it's going to be, and some of them it's not. I think, I feel confident in KJ Duff. I guess you could say he would be a breakout. But Ben Black, especially after, an up and down season last year, I think that there's going to be plenty of opportunities for him. And there's going to be games where the defensive coordinators just don't plan for him at all because they're going to say, hey, we got to plan for everything else. So that may allow for some opportunities for him as a dark horse candidate.
For mine, I guess I don't want to say stretching the definition of breakout, but I think we're going to see a lot more Jayshon Benjamin than people may think. He's been talked about consistently, even since going back to the spring, as being one of those 3 guys in the running back rotation. It seems like he is fully in the mix. So I think we're going to see a lot more from him. He kind of got banged up towards the end of his freshman year, and then he only played in 4 games, so he got his red shirt. We've been hearing that he looks great. He's in great shape. Now, what I'm interested to see is what kind of role he plays, because he has that kind of smaller back, third down type skill set that we saw from him on the field. So how does that compare to someone like CJ Campbell, who it seems like is probably going to be in that potential starting role from the jump. So I'm looking at a guy like Jay Benjamin to step up, even if, Antoine Raymond and CJ Campbell both are as advertised at the running back spot. I'm looking to Jay Benjamin as a guy who can come into the game, even if it's not, a bunch of snaps. I think he can still be impactful and be efficient with the plays that he sees.
Yeah, and I'm gonna go something that's like off the reservation a bit because I don't expect this guy to get a ton of playing time, but I think AJ Serace is gonna build some palpable buzz amongst the fan base from mop-up duty, just how good he looks. Like this has been a consistent drumbeat we've heard since literally he stepped on campus as a true freshman. Obviously, he dealt with an injury last year, so he didn't actually play at all in any live games, but we all saw how he looked in the spring game. I think there's going to be some people who stay for these blowouts to see the fourth quarter when AJ Serace gets in based on how he does whenever his first appearance is, which, hopefully is Thursday if the game goes well enough. But I guess we will see there. But I think AJ Serace is going to build some buzz as to what the 26-year team could look like based on his play. Aaron's having some technical issues. We might not have him for the rest of the episode, but I do want to continue this train moving forward here. We're going to get into some projections now. So we're going to talk about who we think is going to lead Rutgers in different categories. There he is, clear as day now. Welcome back, Aaron. But we are going to get into who we think leads the team in different categories. And we're going to try and get through this a little quicker than we did last year. I know it kind of dragged on a little bit, but I'm going to share this sheet here. Here's where I have the over-unders for each category set at. For the listeners at home, I'll read them out for you. First, we'll start with where I think the receiver categories are at. In terms of who leads the team in catches, I have the over-under set at 59.5 for receptions. I have it at 849 yards in terms of receiving yards. I have the leading receiver at 6.5 touchdowns at the over-under. And then in terms of rushing carries, I have 159.5 as the over-under for carries, 799 yards and a half for the leading rusher, and 8.5 touchdowns for the leading touchdown scorer. Then I have Ethan's numbers. I have it at 28.99 for passing yards, 22.5 touchdowns for the over-under, completion percentage, which we didn't do last year, at 58%, so over-under for that. And then the number of sacks, 20.5. And then the offensive rank, I have at 47.5. So guys, I will just kind of try and do this as quickly as possible. Give us your elevator pitch for who you think leads the team in receptions, and if it's over or under the 59.5 number. I think we were at Larry to start. So Larry, where do you think we stand with receptions? Over under 59.5 for the leader, and who do you think leads the team in receptions?
I think Ian Strong. I just think he's going to be that alpha this year. He's emerged steadily that way. He's versatile. He can do a lot of different things. I think they're going to lean on him. I think he's going to emerge and be that guy. I would put him under 59 receptions only because I think they're going to spread the ball around quite a bit, and I think that might be tough for him to get to. And then over under. I'll probably go under on the yards too, because I just think they're going to spread around. I think he's going to be catching moderate passes. I'll go over on the touchdowns. I'll give him 7 touchdowns. I think in the red zone he's going to be a weapon as he has been. Use the body and get in there and pull some 6 points down.
So do you think Ian Strong leads the team in all 3 of those statistical categories?
So I got to pick.
Yeah, you got to pick players too. We're putting some stakes.
Put a lot of different pressure. Okay,
Mhm.
okay.
Come on, Larry.
Yeah, dude. See, I'm all over the place now.
Ignore the train horn in the background. You're good. It's like
All right,
SHI
Sheffield.
Stadium.
Miller was my leader, I think, last year in yardage, and I'm going to go Sheffield just because I think he can be a play breaker getting down the field. I will go with he will lead the team in yards. I am still going to go under. Leading receiver in touchdowns. I'm actually going to go with Kenny Fletcher.
Interesting.
I think he's going to lead. I don't think he's going to get 6.5. I think it's an under.
So you think it's an under? Got it. All right, Aaron,
he
how about
stays healthy.
you? Let's hear what you're thinking with receptions, yards, and touchdowns for the leader.
Yeah, I'm thinking under on catches and yards, but I'm thinking DT Sheffield for both as the leader. And then touchdowns, I'm thinking the over, and I'm going with my pick from last year, Ian Strong. Huge target in the red zone. I think, to Larry's point, he's going to take another step forward this year. And I think he's the guy that's going to lead this team in touchdowns. So under, over, Sheffield, Strong.
All right. I got the same as Larry for receptions, but Ian Strong leading the team with the under. For yards, I also had Sheffield, but for the under. And then for TDs, I'm going to go Duff, and I'm going to take the over. And
Interesting.
my rationale for that is I could see more scenarios where Strong, Sheffield are in the middle between the 20s. And then once they get in the red zone, I think Duff's going to come in there fresh and be a threat.
So for the receptions, I'm going to go over, and I'll say Strong is the leader. I think, and I don't want to say underrated because, I mean, we saw it with our own eyes, but an interesting part of his game that I felt like worked really well, particularly in the Maryland game, a lot of the inbreakers, he was able to create space and grab. So I'll take the over with that. For the yards, I'll go under, and I'll go with DT Sheffield. I think he gets close to 800, but I don't think he just quite gets there. And then for touchdowns, see, a lot of these answers have been interesting and very different ones as well. I'm gonna go under, but I'll go Ian Strong because I think we'll see some more of those fades as well that we saw down the stretch of the season in the end zone.
Oof. All right. I'm gonna go with the under for receptions as well, but I'm gonna go with Sheffield for the leader here. I think they're gonna try and use him in a lot of different ways, get him a lot of easy completions, whether that be through screens or pop passes, things like that. Just based on how he was used at North Texas, I think they're going to try and translate some of that to the Rutgers offense. Yardage, though, I think I'm going to go over and for Sheffield as well. I think he's got a bunch of big plays in his bag this year, and I don't know. I just have a feeling. I think he's going to have an all-time season for Rutgers football, but something we haven't seen in a while. And for touchdowns, I'm going to go under, but I'm going to have the leader be Colin Weber. Let's see if we can get a tight end, a lot of action in the red zone. How about you, Rich?
Over Sheffield, under Strong, and then I'm going to say under Strong again. I think Sheffield's going to be used in not 100% similar ways to Dymere Miller, but I also think they're going to pass the ball more, so there's going to be more receptions all around. I do think the whole like CJ Campbell thing having to out of the backfield is a little bit overrated. I don't think you'll see as much as people like to think. Kirk Sherrocka notoriously hasn't really thrown to the running backs throughout his entire career mostly. I don't know. I just think Strong's just going to have a really good year, but it's not going to be like that 1,000-yard season that people will probably still dream of. And I just think this passing offense is going to be it's going to run. This whole offense is going to run through the pass game a lot. I don't want to say it's going to be like full like Greg Schiano switching his theories on the run game all of a sudden, but I do think that there'll be a lot more passing this year than probably since 07, 08 maybe.
Yeah. Let's move on to the running game. This is where I think it gets really cloudy, and I'm really intrigued to hear some of the answers regarding the leading rusher in terms of carries, touchdowns, and yards. Aaron, kick us off. Who do you think is going to lead the team in reception or rushing, in carries, in rushing yards, and touchdowns, and which player do you think it's going to be?
Yeah, so I think it's a little bit of a blind guess here, but I really am high on Antoine Raymond just from what I saw last year. I think he's probably as similar to Kyle Monungai as a back that they have this year, which I think leads to kind of their ultimate preference. And I think that we saw some of his ability to kind of churn out some tough yards at times. Obviously, consistency, ability to step up with more carries is going to be key. But I think Raymond for carries and yards will
you think
lead.
He goes
Rutgers.
Under these numbers or over the numbers?
Oh yeah, under. I think under for both yards and carries, because I do again go back to I think it's going to be a committee. I think you're going to see Benjamin, you're going to see Campbell. So I think it's going to be certainly a shared
shared role, but I think that he'll lead them in yards, carries, and I'm going to go with Campbell for TDs just because of his versatility, and I think he could be an effective weapon in the red zone.
Over under 8.5 touchdowns for Campbell.
Under.
Got it. All right, David, how about you? What do you think?
All right, for carries, I got Raymond with the over. He carried 100 times last year. I got to figure he'll get at least double that. I got him so over on the carries, Raymond under on the yards because of like what everyone's going to say. And then the reason I have Campbell in the over for touchdowns is because he was in a rotation last year and still managed 11 TDs on the ground. And so perhaps Raymond is getting the ball between the 20s. And Benjamin, I'm still not sure if they fully trust his they won't fumble because of that was a knock on him previously coming out of high school. So I got Campbell with the over.
All right, Alec, how about you?
Yeah, same thing. I'm gonna go over for Raymond leading the team in carries. I like David said, 100 carries, and it seemed like he didn't really get too much of an opportunity aside from a few games here and there. And Kyle Monangai, by the way, had 256 carries last year, just to say how stark those numbers were. For the leading rusher, I'm going to go under also, but I'm going to say CJ Campbell leads the team in rushing, despite Raymond leading the team in carries in my projection. And then for touchdowns, I'm going to go Antoine Raymond with I'm going to say under 8.5. I think him and Campbell are going to be around that like 7 mark, where I think they'll combine to score plenty of touchdowns, but I think individually they may not reach that 8.5 number.
For carries, I think in terms of touches, I think Campbell might have more touches than Antoine Raymond this year, but carries, I think Raymond will lead the team, and I'm going to go under on that number. So under and Raymond for carries. For yards, I'm going to go over on this one, and I'm going to go with Campbell. I think he's got some big plays in his bag, and just see if that ends up being true, because this is such a crapshoot. And then for touchdowns, I'm going to go over as well, but with Raymond. He had 8 touchdowns last year in mop-up duty, so I think he can be that bruiser down in the goal line, in the red zone, rather, for some easy touchdowns. How about you, Richie?
Over Campbell. I just think even it doesn't matter who starts the first couple games. I think it's going to be determined who will start in the Big Ten play based on those first 3 games. But I think it is going to be a true running back by committee, and they'll see who can do what every day. And I think one of them will eventually emerge. And I just think Campbell has the most potential of that group. In terms of yards, I'm going to say under, and I'm still going to say Campbell. It's so tough because if they are going to do this, our running back by committee, I think it might eventually just emerge into the top 2, and it will end up being not official, like 100% similar to last year, but kind of similar to last year. But the carries will be more split. And I think, like you said, Mike, like Raymond had 8 touchdowns last year on 100 carries. I think he's going to be their bruiser type this year, and I think he'll just be able to find the end zone, whether it be from like 5 yards out, anywhere within the goal line. Honestly, you just give it to Raymond and let him just try to punch it in.
All right, Larry,
I'm
close this
gonna
out.
So I think Campbell's going to have the most carries. I think it's going to be under because not only will it be by committee, I think they're going to just throw the ball more. So looking at Kyle's, numbers of carries last year, it was a heck of a lot. But if you split that up a little more, plus you got more passing earlier in the season, I think it comes down. Yards, I'm going to go Raymond. I'm going to go under. And touchdowns, I'm going to go Raymond. I'm going to go over. I think what Richie said made a lot of sense. He can find the end zone, and he'll do it often.
Let's move on to Ethan's stats now. To refresh here, there's no player portion of this. It's purely just over-under. So it's 28.99 for yardage, 22.5 touchdowns, 58% completion percentage, and 20.5 sacks. David, you've got the first crack at this one. How do you think Ethan's stats stack up this year?
I'm going to go under on the yards. Only 4 QBs in the Big Ten threw for 3,000 yards last year. All of them made the playoff, so they had extra games. I'll go under on the passing TDs because only 5 Big Ten QBs threw for 20 last year. I'm going to go under on the completion percentage because I do think 5% is kind of a high jump. The one thing that's kind of weird with this is if they do any of those jet sweep plays where the quarterback kind of just like They don't hand off. They purposely move it forward in case it's dropped, so it's an incompletion. Maybe we'll pad the stats, maybe less drops, but that's still 5% is a lot. I'm going to go over on the sacks because if there's just one game where they're not just Chris Ash turtle shelling it down 20 and running into the line, but actually trying to make a comeback, you're going to set yourself up for a couple of those sacks. So that's my prediction.
All right, Alec, how about you?
For yards, I think I'm gonna go under. I think I'll get close, but I think I'll fall just a little bit short for the yards. Touchdowns, I think I'll go over. I think with the I think they'll be effective in getting into the red zone. I think we'll see a lot more throwing near the goal line. So I think probably around like the 23-24 range. Completion percentage, I'm thinking kind of along the same lines. I'll go under. Also because of the more of the passing attempts, a more wide open passing game leads you to potentially more things to be incomplete. And yeah, for sacks, I think I'll go over as well for that similar reason because of the more passing attempts. He had 21 last year, so I think just opening up the passing game means more opportunities for sacks, and also you lose your standout left tackle. So yeah, I'll go over on sacks.
Yeah, and I probably should have mentioned what he had last year before we went into some predictions. Last year, Ethan passed for 2,696 yards, a 53.9% completion percentage, 18 passing touchdowns, 7 interceptions, and he's been sacked 21 times each of the last 2 years. His completion percentage has been between 53.1% and 54.1%. So pretty stable with a lot of these stats. I mean, I intentionally tried to make these numbers tough, and I hope we aren't all picking the same thing. I do think he gets. I'm going to go with over on the passing yards, and here's why. I think we're going to be playing from behind more than we did. Not that we didn't play from behind a lot last year, but I think we have the ability to actually form an offense when we're playing from behind and not just kind of chuck it and pray. So I'm going to go with over. I don't think he's going to get I mentioned he's got an outside shot at the season passing record, which I think is around 3,400 yards Mike Teal had. I don't think he's going to get there, but I think he flirts with 3,000 yards this year. His passing touchdowns, I'm gonna also say over. Maybe I'm just being a homer here, but I can see him getting around 24, 25 touchdowns. I'm going to go under on the passing completion percentage. That's kind of why I bumped it up 5%, because I do think there's going to be some gimmies in this offense that he didn't have in the past. And sack wise, I'm going to also say over, but it's not going to be like he gets sacked 30 times this year. I think it's going to be more around 24, 25 ish, just because we're passing the ball more than we have in the past. How about you, Rich?
I'm going to say under. I found the single season stats, and it is Mike Teal at 3,400. But Mike Teal is 2 of the top 3, and Ryan Hart's the 3rd one, and no one else has surpassed or has even hit this number. Not even Gary Nova in his best year. So I feel like under is just a safe bet there. The 22.5 is interesting because I feel like they're going to throw a lot more. They'll have a lot more touchdown opportunities, but I'm still going to say under. I think Dave just said it too. Most, what was it, 3 or 4 quarterbacks in the Big Ten last year, and they were all playoff quarterbacks that hit that number. So I'm going to say under on that one. And then I'm going to go over here. And for honestly the same exact reason that Dave said before, on top of the fact that they also don't have Dymere Miller, who led the team in drops last year. Hopefully Ben Black channels his inner David Tyree and learns how to use the helmet to his advantage this time. So we'll see if that helps. He was 2nd in drops, but you have to think a year older. He was only a freshman last year. He'll be better with that. And for sacks, I'm going to say under, just because this offensive line has been raved about time and time again throughout training camp, from the BTN crew, from the Jake Butt interview we did. Everyone has raved about this offensive line. And mind you, this was after Ryder Langsdale got hurt, that they all got to see him. I think that this line is going to be very, very good this year. And I think they'll be able to give Ethan a lot of time and protect him from getting to that 20 and a half sack number.
All right, Larry.
These are tough. So you pick good numbers. I'm going to go over on the yards. I mean, if you look at his yards last year, 26, I just think he's going to be a step better. He's got probably, I don't know if he's at better protection, but solid protection. And I think the offense is going to run through his arm. So I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt on that. Touchdowns is difficult. I probably would have said over, but my X's and O's consigliere, David over there, said what he said, and it just scared me. So that's an under. I'm not going to do that. Completion percentage is real tough, Mike, because I want to say over, and I want to see him as closer to a 60% quarterback. But the fact of the matter is, he really has never gotten past or even up to the mid-50s in his career. I hope he takes a step. I think he takes a step, but even if he does, I think he's hovering right around 58. So I'm going to say under, and it'll probably be 58 or 57 point something. Sacks, I have to take the beat, actually knows what he's talking about, Consigliere and Richie. And I'm going to go under, because if they're raving about this line the way they are, I'm not only having a better night, but I'm going to pick the under.
Two things for me. I think I think they're going to be in a lot of shootouts, and two, I think if you look at Caliacmanis' stats from last year, the second half of that season, they were much more pass forward than the first half of the season. So I think if it was a whole season of what that second half was like, his stats would have been even better. So, and the fact that I think they're going to be in a lot of shootouts, I'm going over on the yards. I'm going over on TDs. I'm going, like Larry, slightly under on completion percentage. And I'm going to go over on sacks, simply because to David's point, I think they're going to be in a lot of shootouts, and it's going to be open up for sacks down the stretch. So I'm going over, under, over.
Perfect. We spoke to the breakout player in a previous segment, so I'm not going to rehash that. Does anyone here not have Ethan Caliacmanis as their offensive MVP on the season? And if they do, feel free to speak and discuss why. But I'm just going to assume everyone's got Caliacmanis as their offensive MVP, unless I hear otherwise.
I was going to say DT Sheffield. I mean, I know Ethan is the quarterback, and that's how, a lot of times the quarterback's the most important guy. He's going to be getting the ball to DT Sheffield a lot. But I think just his burst ability and his ability to turn big plays, I think he's going to rear that more than one time, more than one occasion. I think his penchant for big plays is going to, even if Caliacmanis is the one getting him the ball, I think his ability to turn big plays is going to help him earn that MVP honor.
Everybody else has Ethan. Let's get a thumbs up if you got Ethan. Yeah, perfect. Now this total offense number, whether or not they're going to be better than the 47.5 overall in total offense, it's kind of an arbitrary number. I don't have like a strong reason why I picked that number. Last year they were 57th. Does anyone have a strong opinion on whether or not Rutgers is going to kind of vault themselves into the top 25-ish kind of category, or if they think they're going to be more of like a bottom or top 60-ish level offense? Anyone who's got a strong opinion on the overall offensive output this year, feel free to kind of speak it, but I'm not going to go, side.
I'll tell you, just for the number, right? To do that, you have to average about 400 yards a game. Mm-hmm. So the question is, do you think Rutgers will average about 405 yards per game on offense? Yes or no?
For context, it was 382 last year.
Sure.
I'm just throwing it out there.
Let's go with 400. That's a nice even number. Do we think Rutgers can average 400 yards of offense a game on average this year? We'll start with, I think it was Alec, I think, next. Alec, 400, yes or no? You think Rutgers can average that this year?
I'm going to say more like 370. So I'll take under by just a shade. I'll say about 370, 380.
I'm going to say yes. I think they'll have some 500-ish roughly games, and then they'll probably have some 300-ish. So I think in the wash it'll come out to around 400. So I'm going to say yes. I think they average 400 yards a game this year.
It's going to be so close, and it really depends on if they get beat up on these early opponents pretty badly. And I think they can put up numbers on Ohio, Miami, Ohio, and hell, Norfolk State even. I'm going to say under, though. I think it's going to be very close, but I'm going to say under, and they're probably going to get slightly under that 400 mark.
Going under, too. It's just until I see it happen, I have a lot of expectations, a lot of optimism, but it's just you talking about averaging 400 yards a game for Rutgers. And even if I don't think we're putting anybody really away in the Big Ten, but even if we get a solid lead. I still think we're going to go back to running the ball, and we're going to play it safe that way. So it might make it harder to get there. So under.
I'm going to go that they're going to do better than that. I think they could be in the 40-ish range, so maybe like 415, 420. I think to Richie's point, getting a lot of yards early on, but I also think the key to this is, can they actually put up yards against the Penn States and Ohio States and Oregons to stay competitive in those games? Can they put up over 300 yards against those opponents where notoriously they've been dominated 150, 200-yard outputs, which really throws a damper on that average and obviously makes them non-competitive. So I do think they're going to be able to move the ball against some of those teams and make it a little more interesting. So I am more confident. I think also those kind of 50-50 games in Big Ten play, to win those games, you're going to have to get over 400 yards. So I'm going over, and I think they're going to be in that 40-ish range overall.
I'm going to take the under because that's what I said on that Fly the Flag podcast and was one of the key criticisms I got, because I said that statistically, they're just facing tougher competition like Aaron mentioned. The other thing I think that might happen is that, yes, they're going to open the offense up in general, but if it's a grind out game against somebody like Maryland, they're going to try to not necessarily turtle shell it, but they're going to try to control the tempo like Alec was talking about earlier. And so I could definitely see a scenario where you have one game that's like, 230 total yards and they still win. That really makes it hard to reach this number. So I'm going to take the under.
So we've talked a ton about the offense. I hope everyone feels a lot more prepared, not only for the season, but kind of to take the temperature of what we're all thinking for this team. Let's talk closing thoughts on the offense. If anyone has anything that hasn't been discussed or has a strong thought leading from this conversation, feel free to speak it now. I'm not going to force this on anyone, but if anyone has any closing thoughts, feel free to chirp them out before we head to the defensive side of this conversation.
I just think so much rests on the offensive line. I'm more confident based on what Richie said, and I'm very high on the skill positions. I'm high on the quarterback. I'm high on the play caller, but we're losing an important piece. We're also getting back some guys that were injured, who I think, like Felter, who I think is a mauler. So it just depends, I think, on that offensive line. I hope they go above and beyond, and if they do, that offense is going to be something to be reckoned with.
Yeah, adding to Larry's point, I think for me, the game that really stands out last year in terms of holding this team back was that Nebraska game, where you saw Calic Manis under great pressure throughout that game. And I think, can they respond with Holland Pierce and Kyle Monungai not there to block for him, tying to everyone else's points about the offensive line in general. But if Calic Manis is running for his life at times, and if he, has that knee flare up again, I think the trajectory of the ceiling for this season definitely takes a step down. So that's really going to be key. Can they replace those two guys from a blocking perspective in terms of Calic Manis's passing potential?
And I guess one last thing for the offense, kind of stretching off the offensive line, the different personnel that we might see. A lot of the last couple of years under Shiraka, it's looked very similar pre-snap. So now with the potential multiplicity, to take a word, I think Mike was the one who said it, how they kind of factor in a lot of the contributors, whether they go two backs, which we haven't seen, or two tight ends, 12 personnel, which we haven't really seen. That's one thing that I'm looking for. See if we have any differences in personnel in the field.
So I think that's all we've got here, guys.
I got one more real quick.
You got something, Rich?
Yeah, I'm hyping myself up a little bit. 2019, Kirk Shiraka's best offense at Minnesota had 432 yards. It was year 3 with his quarterback, Tanner Morgan. It takes 3 years to memorize Kirk Shiraka's offense and get it to full capacity. It's year 3 with Ethan Caligmanis. Could he do it? Like, is this it? Like, I want to go back and change it to over now. Like,
well, he also had 2 NFL receivers in Tyler Johnson and Rashad Bateman, who
is Ian Strong and KJ Dove.
Yeah, they fit the archetype of the guys we got. So maybe, who knows?
But he also had a Rutgers team to beat up on and pad the stats that year. So
it's also fair. I mean, he also had Muhammad Ibrahim as a backup running back, like Rodney Smith. Like, they had some dudes, but mind you, I might want to go back and change that to over. That's all I'm saying.
All right. So that is part 1 of the season preview pod. If you're listening to this today, which is Wednesday, the second part of this will be out tomorrow morning, first thing on Thursday morning. So if you're tailgating in the lots, you'll have plenty of content from all of us to get you through the long day, especially those who get there early. I don't know when the lots open for a 6 o'clock game, but it's probably pretty early. But for me and all the guys, this has been part 1 of the season preview blowout pod for the Night Report, for the Scarlet Faithful, and for Night Watch. We will see you tomorrow.